Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Dodd? Okay. Commissioner Gooch? He's late. Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Piercy?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner P?
He's definitely going to be late tonight if he's able to make it. Our first order of business is the 2021-22 Smyrna Rutherford County Airport Authority budget, and I'm not sure who's going to present that for us.
Does now. Okay, I'll present it. Presented before you is the Airport Authority's budget for the 21-22 fiscal year. They're showing their proposed budget is estimated income of $2,250,000 through 36. Their expense $1,226,616. After miscellaneous other income and other expense, their net, they are projecting $883,745,000.
And we found, after looking at this year after year, that one of the requirements is for them to bring that budget to us for review. And I would ask if there are any questions on this budget. If not, I would accept a motion to approve this budget.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Okay, 2 seconds there. Are there any other discussion on the Airport Authority budget? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Next up is the Teen Learning Grant Amendment for Juvenile Court and Youth Services. And this is a grant, and I think Lisa's going to cover a few of these.
See, this is the fourth year. This is a second amendment. It's for the same amount of money, $417,696.
This is non-matching.
It's for next, no, sir, it's not matching. And it is for next fiscal year, and it's already built into the budget.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Chairman Allen. Have a motion to approve. And a second. Commissioner Dodd, thank you, sir. Any other questions about this grant? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. The next three are unemployment amendments, and we'll let Lisa carry on. First is general fund budget amendment.
The first, as you said, is the general fund budget, general fund, and we pull about $20,000 because we're not for sure what it is going to be for the year and where it's going to hit. Actually, it was more. We're going to need an additional $33,840 out of unassigned fund balance to be able to pay the unemployment claims for our estimate for the end of the fiscal year.
Well, that amount will get us through the end of the year.
Yes.
We hope.
We hope. We'll tell you in June 26 if we need to come back for more.
Okay.
You want me to go on for the other ones or separate votes?
It's okay with me unless I see someone from the committee that wants us to do these separately. These are all unemployment benefits for these three groups.
It's the same type thing in solid waste. We don't have a pooled amount for that one, but there's a need of $1,450 that is needed for unemployment. We'll take that out of the unassigned. In ambulance, there was $1,270 for unemployment that we'll take out of their assigned fund balance.
You've heard the request for these for budget amendments for unemployment for these three sections. Are there any questions for Budget Director? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Pierce?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. All right, next up is the Regional Transport Authority Annual Contract. Mayor, do you want to step in on this one or let Lisa continue?
This one, okay. This is a yearly one. Again, this one is already built into the budget as well. It is through RTA, and it is the county's contract to provide, support for RTA on behalf of the county. The county on this one is $61,254, less $12,034 that's coming from the CARES Act, with the balance due of $49,220 for the county.
This is something we typically do every year.
We do every year, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, for those who are not familiar with the RTA, I sat on that committee. These are the purple buses that stop. They originate here. We go purple buses, so they'll transport people, pick up at different stations, and transport to Nashville and then back. So once they get to Nashville, they go to the main bus station, and then they'll be redistributed to whatever location they want to go to. Ridership's been way down, of course, this whole past year because of COVID. But they're still doing okay from a physical standpoint. That just authorizes me to sign the contract.
You've heard the request. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Chairman Allen. And a second, Commissioner Piercy. Any other questions for the mayor or for Lisa?
How many buses are there? Do you know?
I do not know.
Two different routes that they run. It's a 86X route and an 84X route, which is 84 comes from Murfreesboro and 86 only goes to Smyrna and forward. So it's two different bus routes. Our share of the Smyrna route is $15,416, and our share of the Murfreesboro route is $33,804.
I guess it's
So
close
there's
as
two?
It's two different bus routes. I'm not sure how many runs they make
okay.
on a daily basis, though.
7 trips per day. If you look on Relax and Ride on your SharePoint, number of daily trips is 7, or 6 right now, but it's increasing to 7 going into next year is the projection.
Okay, are there any other questions? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
And I'm sorry, I just saw where the mayor was talking about the Murfreesboro route is 22 routes a day and the Smyrna route is 7 routes a day, as the mayor said. Yeah.
Okay, next up is the dead stock removal contract.
And this is a yearly budget, and we've got it, a yearly contract, and this is for next fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021, and the rate that they're charging $39,034, and that's already built into next year's budget.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion, do I hear a second? And a second. Any questions on this contract? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. I requested this next item to be brought up tonight because we've got a heavy agenda on the 10th, which is our next meeting. But this was discussed the other night at the property management. Of course, I know a couple of y'all sit on that committee also. But having said that, Mayor, if you would.
Mr. Stanley's passing out a sheet to make reference to. As the chairman stated, members, that this opportunity came out of property management and forwarded on to you here tonight at budget. We have been actually talking to Mr. Jordan Thompson. Jordan Thompson is out of Chicago, and he represents the JDM Partners. Back in 2013, JDM Partners bought all of 14 regional offices with State Farm and then leased them back to State Farm. It was I guess, some type of tax opportunity for State Farm to do that. That is who I contacted when we were first looking for a location to put our vaccine for COVID. After school was coming back in January, we had to get out of Siegel High School. So it worked out well for us to give the COVID-19 vaccinations there because they had a 3-bay garage where you could actually drive through and continue on, and plenty of parking at that location. But because of COVID, I think this was already in the plans before COVID, but State Farm was looking to relocate, shut down all of their regional offices that they've had and consolidate more into one in Atlanta, one in Dallas, one in Denver, and one in Phoenix, and then one in the Seattle or Portland area, and make more of a larger complex, brick and mortar complex with a full campus around those facilities. And more people are going online, purchasing State Farm, so that or insurance in general, people are changing their buying habits. So this was a move, and so this building out here has been vacant. They vacated it back in February, so all the people were sent home that were still here in Murfreesboro to work from home until they decide who was going to get pared down, who was going to ask to retire early, or et cetera. So that led us to looking at the opportunity to talk with JDM Partners, Mr. Thompson, about the purchase of that building. The landlord debt and defeasance on that building right now is $50,065,866. State Farm, in order to get out of the 7-year lease that's still committed to, is willing to step up and pay $24,530,237 to buy themselves out of the lease. That would allow someone to purchase that building for $25,535,649. So if this county commission is interested in buying that property, we could get it for $25,500. That is 403,000 square feet, approximately 9 acres under roof, and 62 acres for the whole plot of the property. And checking with Mr. Mitchell, our property assessor, that building appraises for $66 million. He is currently assessing that building for $33 million. That equates to, if purchased at $25,500, that would equate to $64 per square foot, which you can't even come close to building any type of that facility. There's been several tours taken out there, looked at it. School board expressed a little bit of an interest about maybe creating moving the Central Magnet School out there, or creating a middle school for Riverdale. But for $25 million, you can't build an elementary school. But I don't think that they really like it. I think that so our use would be Plan B would be to take half of the square footage and turn it into a morgue, and also a forensic facility that Commissioner Reed's been talking about for several years. I've been in contact with MTSU, and their forensic department is excited about the possibility of this working. I've been in touch with our congressman and both U.S. senators. They said that there's great opportunities because of this type of facility, kind of a modern-day CSI, if you will, for additional grants that could be brought forward. MTSU is willing to provide an opportunity for their doctors in the combination Meharry MTSU medical program that got started just a couple of years ago. They go to MTSU for 3 years, and then 3 years to Meharry, graduate as a medical doctor. Dr. Hildreth at Meharry got excited about this opportunity because he said most doctors never get, while they're going to medical school, never get an opportunity to actually work on a cadaver, if you will. It's always on some type of laboratory dummy that they work on. There's opportunities right now. I think Director Hudgens told Public Safety last week in his report that we're probably going to eclipse, nod your head yes or no if I'm wrong on this, over $600,000 that we're currently paying to send those who commit suicide or have drug overdoses in Rutherford County. So that's in your current budget, and that's being spent to find out the cause of death when we send it to the forensic facility in Nashville. That could be retained here to help offset internal expenses. Also, they've been in touch, Mr. Hudgens and Mr. Clark have been in touch with other counties surrounding us. Bedford County, Cannon County, Warren County, Smith County, White, all of those who are looking to send their bodies as well would generate revenue on an annualized basis to bring those here, because the forensic facility in Nashville is overcrowded as well. As far away as Jackson, those bodies for all those cities in the western Middle Tennessee area are coming this direction instead of going to Memphis, because Memphis is overbooked with our continual growth. The other half would be of the 200,000 square feet, is to set it up for all emergency management, sheriff's department, EMS, fire and rescue, administrative offices. And the other night at property management, sheriff was asked to give his opinion, and he said it would possibly, if this was purchased by the commission, give the opportunity for co-locating our primary PSAP, which he has and controls, and our secondary PSAP that ambulance currently has, and put them in the same area working with each other from that same location. So that kind of sets it up in a nutshell of what the possibilities are. So you ask, where would you get the money? The intent would be, and kind of outlined and gone into the 151-page coronavirus recovery funds, term the American Rescue Plan. These are items that are talked about in that 151-page document sent to us. So you see all the bullet points of how we justify it coming under the justification for using those funds for this purpose of the purchase. And in one of the documents, some of you may have seen, it says, fact sheet, the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds will deliver $350 billion to state, local, and territorial. And then back on page 3, it says capital investments in public facilities to meet pandemic operational needs. In talking with the comptroller's office, the way they explained it and interpret this is, as long as we're using it looking forward and not backwards, for the next pandemic, for the next surge or variant that may come, and the next whatever virus may come, it could be used for that. This could be used as you see these different bullet points that we have placed in there. We're talking on the forensic side, probably the need for at least 100 drawers for the morgue. Right now, most of the hospitals have maybe 4 to 5 drawers, some less than that. If there were a natural disaster on the interstate, or a train wreck with spilling ammonia or some dirty bomb or anything that may happen catastrophic in Rutherford County, there is no place to take more than 4 or 5 people. That's what prompted us to purchase the reefer trailers that we did back when the pandemic first started. There's not enough room in Nashville to take 30 people or 50 people or 100. As described to me, that they would have to either commandeer the ice rink where the Predators play, and until the bodies could be identified and autopsies be identified. So that would be the purpose of doing that, and you could set those coolers up and only run them on an as-needed basis. So that kind of sets it up. I'm looking for direction. It's passed out of property management to move forward. It was unanimous out of property management. Bring it to you. This is, if it passes the full commission, give me the ability, along with our legal department, to negotiate the purchase of that building for $25,500. The urgency would be is that this is not going to stay on the market very long. That's a lot of property and one heck of a building, and somebody would be looking to buy it and sit on it or flip it or do whatever. So I think it's a bargain of any of our times. I know in my 24 years of service, I've never seen an opportunity like this. MTSU had something similar to this when the hospital closed and moved its location. They were able to come in and buy for pennies on the dollar the newer section of the old Baptist St. Thomas Hospital, which they now occupy.
Any of you...
This discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions about the grant. How long do we have to use the property for these purposes before we could do something else with the building? Is it, if you take the grant, are you locked into these purposes forever, or is it 5 years or 10 years? how long do we have to do this?
In the 151 pages, and I've read it 4 times, trying to glean more. I've talked to people. I've even talked to Mrs. Thomas and talked to their policy department and at the U.S. Treasury yesterday. There's no time limit. It's just so broad in how they describe this. They make reference to it in several different areas of the explanation, but there's not an end time on it. What it does say that you have until 2024 to obligate the dollars, and then you have until 2026 to spend it.
I think, Commissioner, a lot of those federal grants in the past, if you bought equipment or something, it was about 5 years.
I guess what my concern is...
If you sold it, you had to return that money back, and that's a broad statement over a lot of federal grants.
If we buy this and decide in 3 years or 7 years we want to build a school there, or we want to change and make administrative offices for other county departments, are they some auditor going to come down later and say you're not using it for the purposes that we allowed in that grant 5 years ago or 7 years ago?
That's a possibility, but if the sheriff moves out of there, I don't think he'll move anywhere. I don't think you'll get him out of there and turn it into a school. He'll be there because he's going to give up space. As he said the other night, it would give him opportunity to expand at the current jail site and give office space for his jail and for Dr. Rudd to expand his medical purposes. Am I correct, Sheriff? And I think the other administrative offices probably would not move in 4 or 5 years.
And another question I had is about the $600,000 of savings. I do like that. Would we have to hire more people, though, to run the morgue?
More people to what?
To run the morgue, as staffing and so forth. If we're not paying to send the bodies elsewhere and we bring all this in-house, what's it going to cost us for additional staff and maintenance and so forth on this facility? Or is it going to cost us more to bring it here, or is it cheaper to spend the $600,000 there?
Well, you may want to suspend the rules, Mr. Chairman, let Mr. Hudgens come up and maybe help address that issue. But if we're saving $600,000, you're going to have staff. Yes, that will grow. But if say Bedford County is sending their bodies to, and they're spending only $200,000, and Warren County spending $250,000, you're still generating income to help offset the utility bills and maintenance of the inside on an annual basis. So that's recurring dollars I see that would mount up, right?
Without objection, we'll allow Director Hudgens to speak unless I see an objection. I don't. Go. Please continue.
Yes, Mr. Stevenson, the mayor's right. We would have to hire more staff. But the current $600,000 that we're going to be spending, that's never going to get less. As we populate, those numbers are going to go up. And we have a business plan. I don't have it with me. I wasn't prepared for this tonight, but I'll be glad to share it with any of you. It's 2 to 3 years old. Might have to update a few numbers, but we will have to hire more staff. But what we're paying now for autopsy, we could pay for over about 2/3 of the staff now.
Well, I'm very interested in those savings, but I would like to see the business plan to see how many people you expect to hire and how many people we're expecting to bring in from other counties, and just, I'd like to see if the numbers are going to work. Sometimes things that sound like a great deal, if you end up having to spend more money later, it may not be a good deal, but this does sound like it has potential there, so I'm interested in that for sure.
Okay. Me and Denise will make arrangements to share all of that.
Before you go away, one thing the mayor mentioned is that the sheriff had talked about moving the primary PSAP, which he has at the sheriff's department, to this location if we decided to buy it, and co-locate with ambulance dispatch. Now, I don't know how many of y'all have been on public safety and know Commissioner Piercy has, but that's been kind of Commissioner Johnson also in the past, it's been kind of a long-term dream of us trying to co-locate our dispatch together, and that'd be a step in that direction. But I've got a couple of questions for the sheriff too, if y'all don't mind indulging me on, and the sheriff doesn't mind answering a few for us.
Or even Chris.
Chris, yeah.
Chris has taken over, we're moving dispatch, secondary PSAP, now under his budget, Chris.
Right,
Yeah.
That's right. Well, the questions I've got for the sheriff are, I know if you've been following public safety, one of the concerns that we've got is, the capacity of the jail. Now, right now, our capacity is down because of the COVID and the courts being closed. If that expands and we jump back up to 1,000 prisoners again, if you were able to move, and the way I'm just secondhand here, if you were able to move part of your personnel or your office staff from the jail, say your patrol units, that kind of stuff over there, is that what the idea is? And then you'll free up space at the jail facility for expansion, or can you expound on that a little bit? I'm just kind of wondering what you've got in mind.
One of the things that we've got right now is we have run out of space for our medical, and the problems that we're seeing now is more inmates coming in with some type of medical problem, which has to be treated by us, by law. We have to furnish that treatment. The Dr. Rudd staff right now is in a location where their administrative staff is stacked up there together, so that would allow us to move our detention staff out of the back part of the facility and expand the medical part. There's cells in the medical part that could be repurposed for either segregation situations or certain types of medical. Our second floor is taken up of mental health and medical. We've got somebody in with the inmates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it would allow us a little bit more freedom in expanding that part of that into where the medical cells are right now. The part as far as expanding to cells, there would be some cinder block work on one side of a hallway that would have to be done, but it would be far cheaper than having to build a whole new facility to add to space. I know I'll speak to, we've got pretrial release right now. I think what we're doing is looking to see if our numbers, when you're talking about going back up to 1,000, if this continues the way the judges are envisioning this is going to help us maintain our level, where I don't know that we're going to see the 1,000 number anymore. This is a movement that's nationwide. It's going across the nation, and we're seeing this. Our judges have seen fit through Commissioner P., who's helped us with the pretrial release, which has had a tremendous impact on reducing our facility numbers with nonviolent inmates who come in on misdemeanor type charges. This is something we're watching very closely, and right now we're hovering right around 650 to 658 inmates. Capacity is 968. So we've got quite a bit of room that we can fudge on right now in that area.
That sounds terrific.
I'll answer this question and say, well, why don't we close some down? I can't do that on floors because there is inmate classification by federal law. I've got to classify these inmates. Depending on their classification, I've got to separate them by floor. I can't mix inmates with different classifications. This is when we get into lawsuits. So I've got to maintain my floor levels by classification. So that's one of the things that we have to continually watch. I hope that answered some of your questions.
Yeah, it did. Being on public safety for a number of years, this is something that's been reoccurring. I noticed Chairman Reed was finally able to make it in. He got the problem with the traffic out there everybody else has ran into. But anyway, like I said, one of my concerns was, are we going to have to look at building a new jail facility? And I'm wondering if this will help offset the cost or the time that it would take for us to see a need to build another facility. You made me feel pretty good there as far as those numbers and talking about our judges helping keep those numbers down.
At the time we did the last study where CTAS came in and did a study on our jail, we were consistently running at 870, 880, hitting up into the 900 mark consistently. Of course, COVID came, and that was one thing. Then pretrial release came, and that was another facet of it. The courts have opened back up. We're starting to see more cases. People are being sentenced. But right now, we've been able to maintain our level at about the 558 to 560 level because of pretrial. So we're turning over anywhere from 60 to 80 inmates a day where we're having this turning where people coming in and coming out. And so for right now with pretrial plus the courts, the way they're working, and then also we're doing video court at our facility where we're not having to transport some people. So all of this combined has helped us to hold our numbers, and we're going to continue along that line. So.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any other questions for the sheriff while we got him up here?
I've got one. The portion that you would move there from the jail now, is this just employees only, or are you talking about bringing some inmates too for a portion of time, or what?
About the inmates, bringing inmates into.
Are you just going to move your staff over there, or will you be moving inmates in and out of there periodically at times, or?
No, this will be, what we'll do is where we have detention staff now would be moving them out into where we are occupied. We, law enforcement side, is occupied. Would give them office space where we can move them out of the detention facility itself and free up some space in our detention facility. But it's staff only. We're not talking about moving inmates. Yes, sir.
Would you have, say, the patrol units, would they basically be based at this new facility if we decided to go that route?
That's our vision, yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I was assuming now.
If I could, one of the things what we're looking at, of course, obviously would be administrative staff. We would have to leave our warrants clerks at the jail facility because they work hand in hand with detention. So the warrants clerks would stay there. Evidence would probably stay at the old location because of the security of our evidence that has to be turned in for cases. But we're looking right now at administrative staff, clerical staff. We're looking at the possibility, of course, obviously our patrol division, SRO division, and then probably our CID division is what we're looking at would be into this new facility. We've got some things down the road that we could look at that could possibly free up some property, county property that we could put up for sale. So there's a good possibility of that by being able to consolidate.
Yeah, I believe, Mr. Chairman, that TBI and other law enforcement agencies at a higher level have expressed interest in possibly renting space in this kind of a law enforcement sector.
In our CID location, we provide a desk. Of course, they share when they come through, but FBI, TBI, Marshal Service and whatnot, they will come into our facility, and in our CID location, we've got a space for them to work when they come in. I've got officers who are assigned to these various agencies and are certified through them, which allows us some latitude that some facilities don't have.
And you suggested the other night at property management, the idea kind of shocked some of us about co-locating our primary PSAP and secondary PSAP.
Yeah, to explain that a little bit, we've got, we're the primary public safety answering point for the county. Any 911 call that originates in the county, regardless of what it's for, comes to our location first. Then via online transfer, which is an immediate, we can transfer ambulance. Ambulance then would dispatch either ambulance or fire. Co-location would be, we could be located in the same room. Still, there would be a physical difference because of EMD type of certifications versus law enforcement certifications. But it would allow us to be in the same room and give us some freedom to do everything else that we don't have right now. One of the other things too is that we support the secondary PSAP in that since we're primary, then we host everything for the ambulance service at this time. And so this allows us to bring all our equipment together in one location. So that would be something that certainly would want us to look at least explore.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Okay, thank you, Mike. I know Chairman Reed had made the trek up here. If he'd like to speak, I'd certainly like to hear from him. But, you know, my feelings on this, and I think I've been pretty open about that. I personally feel like this would be a good investment for the county, but, you know, this is a decision we all got to make. What I'd like to do is get a recommendation from this committee to take this to the full commission for a vote up or down. For one reason is, you know, the mayor cannot negotiate without our approval or our blessings to go ahead and do this, or to make a deal or a contract for this facility. And I don't think this facility will be on the market very long either. I think most of you would probably agree with that. But anyway, like I said, bottom line, for my point of view, I'd like to see at least this go to the full commission and give a vote, you know, up or down. Hey, are we interested in pursuing this, and allow the mayor to negotiate terms to purchase. But having said that, you know, if there's other questions out there, I know
I have a question.
Mr. Piercy.
Do we have any idea how much money this will take from the tax roll if the county takes ownership of this property?
I have not asked that. Lisa, did you know?
I don't know right off. I don't know.
My second question, all of these bullet points on this paper.
He says, what'd you say, it was assessed for $30 million?
Didn't the mayor say that?
The assessment was, when I talked to Mr. Mitchell, he's got it assessed at $33 million.
30 million times.
I don't know how to equate that.
We can find that and have that for us at our next meeting on the 10th, or then we meet, what, the 15th, the public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I actually looked it up while we were talking. It's $294,317 is what they paid this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Allen. I appreciate that.
My second question was, all these points on this paper tend to go toward the building. What about the extra property? Will it be cleared through the money used to buy the building by it being open land and nothing on it? Or will they pull that away and say, hey, you can't use the money to buy open property?
No, sir, that's not talked about in that 151 pages anywhere. It would be for the total amount of what we purchase it for at 25.5. You know, comes with the 62 acres and 9 acres under roof is a total. It doesn't say that it can't be expended for vacant land. You know, a lot of that's parking.
A lot of it's not, too. It comes out on Osborne Lane.
It does. It does.
Just a question.
Yeah, no, I know if there's space needed once we purchase it, and there's space needed for anything else the county wanted to build, I think that would be our purpose, you know, our prerogative to build on that extra property.
Rather than just keep dragging this on here with 6 commissioners, I'd make the motion to move this to the full commission with no up or down decision and let the full commission discuss it.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Lisa was trying to interject something, if you would.
You know, one is to use the money from the Rescue Act that we don't have yet. So, along with this, and I've already spoke to the mayor about this, we won't have federal auditors in here for 5 years, but we're going to have comptroller auditors in here they're here now. Of course, we don't have this money yet, they're not going to review it, but they'll review it next year. What I would like to do to make sure those questions that you are asking are covered is that to submit to our auditors, to the comptroller, this is our plan for this and for the public safety buildings, to know at least our first group of auditors who are going to look at it will at least have an indication of what their view is on what our anticipated purposes are. For me, the fact that we used this building as our response to COVID, with giving the vaccines and doing the testing, kind of gives a leg up of we've already used this for this purpose. But I would like to be able to pass it through along with this and what are our estimated uses are. I mean, public safety response, you know, these question and answers just came out the 27th. I just got these before we came in. I was trying to quickly read through them as we were going through this meeting. This is just a question, how do I know a specific use is eligible? These are the 4 major categories. I'm not going to flip off of this, but there's another whole section about using salaries as an eligible use, and part of that is for sheriff deputies and things like that. So it brings in that public safety sheriff communications part. I mean, you can use their salaries as an eligible use of this money. I would just take it that step further. Why can't we use the where they work as an eligible? I would just feel better. I probably will not be here when you're audited by the feds, and a lot of us might not be, but I'd like to have at least that question answered. I think we'll get a pretty quick response from the comptroller's office on whether or not they view our intent of use of purpose. It'll be the first blush. They're the one who's going to make a decision if we bought it, whether or not we did, that it was an eligible use or not. I would like to have it on the front end and know.
Comment, Chair.
I actually met our auditor today, first day that they were here, and I agree with her right down the line. And that's what I've heard several of the committee members say, is that we want to know if we can use this or not. Well, this is a good direction to go, sending the letter to the comptroller's office. And you said we should get this soon. How soon is soon? We have this by, say, the full commission meeting?
I'm hoping if we can, I'll get with the mayor, we can craft something. I mean, you've got a lot of it already built.
Sure.
And I mean, they'll accept an email. It doesn't have to be a formal letter. It can be an email listing these, and I would use all 3 of these things.
So we should have an answer on.
I hope if we could get it out tomorrow that we would have it by the 10th.
Well,
That's what would be my hope. I mean, it would give me comfort knowing that it would be an eligible use of funds.
Right. Now, my other question, and I'll open it up for everyone else here too. When do you anticipate actually getting these funds? I know.
Like already.
Right.
So when I spoke to the comptroller's office, he didn't believe any counties had received funds. Have you heard anything?
Some municipalities, I believe, have already received some. Doug, you hadn't got your trough of money, have you?
We received, the ESER 2, we received that, but we did not receive this third round.
The third round. The 56 million you haven't received. And that was broken up in half. It's supposed to be we get half, and then next January we get the other half, 6 months from now.
Well, 12 months from the time we get the first bit.
Mm-hmm. We were supposed to get it around the 15th of May, and here it is, 1st of June. We're 15 days late and haven't received anything, but I've heard some municipalities have already received theirs. Mr. Chairman, I found it interesting that Commissioner Reed was doing some research and found an article where I believe, Chairman, wasn't it the governor in North Carolina was going to use these dollars from the American Recovery Fund to remodel Charlotte Raceway? So, I'm sorry? 30 million? I think if they can justify 30 million for a raceway, we can justify 25 million for this type building.
So there's another strategy, and I did find it in here. Let's see if I can find it again.
While she's looking, are there any specific questions, Commissioner Allen?
I guess I just feel like we're only looking at one piece of this puzzle, and purchasing the building is just one piece. And so I guess part of what I'm listening for is how are all the other pieces going to fit together? So just, and you know me, I function on high levels of information, so when we start talking, I immediately start having questions. So these are just some of the things that I had jotted down, and they're not in any particular order. I'm curious, how quickly could we get a morgue operational? What are the furniture, fixtures, and equipment expenses? What's that going to cost to go into it? And can we use this money, for that as well? What's the annual operating expense going to be? We're talking about launching an entirely new department. What is that going to be? Some of those folks are talking about transferring existing staff, but you're also talking about adding staff. And so what is that going to look like? We've talked about partners in participation, whether it be Meharry or be, business from other counties. Have we had serious enough conversations with these partners to find out what are they willing to do? What are they willing to commit to be, to really be a partner in this project? Have we done any kind of projection of revenue on bringing in those bodies from other or from other counties, and not just us anticipating what they would be, but have we had conversations with them and said, if we build this, what level of commitment, can we get from you? What would you need? Is this, a source for you? And then I guess one of my last things would be, could we do the deal contingent, because I know you're wanting to go ahead and get negotiations going, could we do it contingent of finding that this is an authorized use of these funds? Because my fear would be, like in what happens in North Carolina when they find out after the fact that wasn't an okay use of funds.
Well, and that's the tough part, because I don't think that the U.S. Treasury is actually going to come out and say, and that's the tough part about these grants, they're not going to put in writing, here's our submission, here's what we want to use it for. They're not going to come out and say that, yes, you're authorized to do that. They've got over, how many counties?
There's either 5,000 or 6,000 counties in the nation.
5,000 or 6,000 counties, plus tribal nations and numerous municipalities are getting these tranches of money. We're getting 64, school boards getting we're getting 64, you're getting 56, is that correct? Huge chunks of money that are coming in, but I don't think they're going to come back after the fact. Like I would say an auditor probably will have to answer to our local comptroller, and I talked to Comptroller Mumpower. He said he's willing to come down and address the committee, but still at that, I don't think he's going to put anything in writing and say, yes, that's a guarantee from U.S. Treasury that could be done. We can get the numbers of what it costs to heat and cool that. We can get that very quickly. Director Hudgens has already communicated over the last several years with those other surrounding counties that they've saying if that happens, yeah, we'll bring our bodies there. It's closer transportation, driving all the way to Nashville and not having room to do that. I think we can, in short order, we can answer a lot of your questions, Commissioner Allen. I don't know that we would be able to make an offer contingent upon. Right now, their JDM Partners is underwater. They've got 14 of these. Over the course of the last 6 months, they tried to collectively sell all of them at one time. They didn't get the first nibble. They currently have 2 real estate agents in Nashville trying to market this facility. so I would say it'd have to be firm on our part. We just don't have anything totally firm, but I think that our justification here, and everybody I've talked to, even at the comptroller's office, I've talked to in Congressman Desjardins' office, I've talked to other folks who, when I read this to them, and when it talks about the expenditure for capital investments in public facilities to meet pandemic operational needs, I think we could justify that.
Commissioner,
It's a hard call.
this 4.5 up here, this is what we're dealing with. This is the guidance we have. Are we required to submit proposed expenditures to Treasury for approval? No. Recipients are not required to submit planned expenditures for prior approval by Treasury. Recipients are subject to the requirements and guidelines of eligible uses contained in the interim. So it's like, okay. And then how do you know if a specific use is eligible? Then they give you those 4 major topics.
So, again, this is just kind of where my head's at, is that, we've really pushed all of our departments to give us a budget of needs, not wants. And so that's what I'm trying to reconcile in my own head is this a need, or is it a want? And are we reacting to an opportunity, and are we reacting too quickly is my concern. And I know there's some eagerness because, we think, developer might want to come in there and get it, and it is. I mean, you can't look away from this and not acknowledge, you've got a great facility, terrific location, infrastructure's already there. There's definitely opportunity there. Again, my only apprehension is the downside of acting too slow would be that it stays on the tax roll, that somebody else, would come and get it and it stays on the tax roll. The downside to buying it and then figuring out later of what we're going to do with it or how we're going to pay for it or that it's going to cost more, I just want to make sure we've done all of our due diligence and we know exactly what it is that we're getting into. And again, you go in with your best estimates, you go in with your best projections. I just want to make sure that we've put a pencil to it and really tried to do the very best we could in crafting that business plan, that Carl has, and just, he said he'd need to knock the dust off of it. Let's knock the dust off of it. Let's figure out, what is this going to cost? So.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring this tonight, to get these questions out here so we can try to get these answers together, get it back to the full commission as quickly as we can. That way we can act or not act. I did invite Chairman Reed to come speak tonight. If it's okay with the committee, I'll, at this time, invite you up. Chairman Reed, thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to come in front of you. I have been since 4:45 trying to get here to you. And if you have come from the south end of this county, you would understand why. The last time I've driven in traffic like that, I happened to change shifts with some guys I was traveling with to go north, and I happened to get the shift to go through Chicago at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's what we have right now, all the way to the square, due to the fact of an accident out here on I-24. And it has closed down New Salem, and it's closed down Church Street out here. Everything that was on interstate has been routed to those roads. And people are coming off those interstate, and they're coming all the way up here to Church Street, and they're getting here, they don't know where to go, and they're coming all the way up here to the square. And the reason I mention that is as I have tried to travel and do creative driving, I guess is what you would call it, trying to get here, because I have come all the way from New Salem, down Warrior, over to Church Street, and I have jockeyed in between some trucks. I drive a Tacoma, and I've been jockeying between some trailer trucks like you won't believe that is running on our streets out here right now. And the reason I say that, Commissioner Allen, you mentioned about the forensic center that we've talked about. If you remember, I guess it's been 2 years, I'm not sure, when we presented white pages here concerning a forensic center here in Rutherford County. And those forensic center pages, of those white pages we presented to you, it gave of what space and size we are needing. It gave you estimates as far as what we are hoping to project to work with, where we wanted to go. It had a lot of that information that you've asked for right here. I know when we toured the building out there, we saw how what we had projected would fit there. You talked about partnering with others. Well, we have talked with MTSU on that in particular, and it just so happened we had a pandemic to happen right after that, so that stopped all the talks and where we're going there. But I just had to think a while ago, as I had plenty of time to think, for way over an hour of driving in between all these trailer trucks, I had to look at those trailer trucks beside me and sit there and think, what are they carrying? What are all these trucks carrying through Murfreesboro right now as they drive among thousands of people all over those two roads and these intersections? And we had people out here right now, if you went out there, I hope it's cleared up by now, they're that far apart. They're using every space on these roads trying to get home. And I had a young lady in front of me, she's not paying any attention to this thing about hands-free. She's sitting there the whole time just like this. And this is all over those roads. And in Rutherford County, where we sit right now, we have 840 coming this way, coming from I-40, where everything in the United States transfers. It crosses I-24 out here, making an X. It all comes right here in Rutherford County. We have railroads coming this way. We have Pillsbury out here that has some major tanks in there. And besides that, we have Smyrna Airport down here that's located in our county. That X I always look at on those highways, it says X marks the spot. And when I think about this is how prepared we are to take care of a situation and what we've got to do. And I think that's what we see in public safety. And a facility like what that building could do for us and what we could move in there and work with, it'd be the next step for us as far as safety is concerned, as far as being prepared in Rutherford County. We just got through with a situation down there on Fate Sanders, and 7 individuals lost their life right there. To us, that's a fairly large plane, but yet there are larger planes across this county every day. But yet there are those railroads, there's all these trucks, there's everything that crosses this county that we sleep at night that we don't know what goes through this county. So what I'm trying to say here is this is an opportunity, I think, that, at the cost, when you look at what, I think they're projecting, $64 a square foot?
Yes, sir.
Of what we're buying. I don't know if you priced a 2x4 lately, but that's what, about 3 2x4s? $10. $10, yeah. Well, it's already sitting out there, and it's ready to go with just a little bit right there. And there's going to be cost as far as maintaining and getting that going and what we got to do there. But yet, a lot of it is already there in what we can do. As far as the sheriff is concerned, we sit here and discuss all the time about how long it's going to be before we're going to have to expand that facility, but yet this gives us that opportunity to expand that on further too. So, where I sit, and I think I have told you all this many times before, public safety was something that I really, and you know that as well as many of you know, that this was something I really wanted to be a part of and something to see within this county and where we go. And where this county is growing right here, that's one of the parts of the infrastructure and the piece to the puzzle that if we don't continually add those pieces to it, that one of these days we'll catch ourselves looking down the road and it's out there and we're trying to grab that carrot and we can't get a hold of it because it does expand. Because just like this afternoon out there, who would ever have thought? We usually have one exit that is open, but today we've got 2 exits that are closed. And that's a dangerous situation that we in Rutherford County just experienced in this situation right here. For me, that normally takes at the most 30 minutes to get here to this courthouse, and I planned on that today is what I was going to do. You know, here I went from 4:45 to 6 o'clock getting here. And this is what we have going in this county, and this is an opportunity of something that we can have sitting there ready for us to use within it. So I may have said more than what you really wanted to hear, but and what our finance director is saying right there, I totally understand that. I get that. But I have read that more than any final test I've ever tried to take. And I've read it, and I've read it, and I've read it, and I keep seeing, I said, okay, you know, first of all, it's material that is written in a way, I guarantee you a congressman wrote that material, because it don't say nothing, really, when you get down to it, and when it gets down to what you're trying to explain, and really, it works in a way that it's telling you something, but not telling you something. In other words, it's saying, hey, I've got an opinion, and this is the way it's going to do. But you know about opinions. Everybody has their opinions in the way it looks at it. And you know, if you've ever had dealing with audits, there are opinions there too. I feel that I think what we're looking at and what we're doing, I think that if we have a facility like that and we can do the operations we want to do there, the next pandemic that comes down the road, Rutherford County would be well set to go out and take care of what we got to do. That's what we're talking about in these public safety buildings, because I look at it as, okay, if we had those come January of this year, what would they have done for us? We'd have been in great shape. Instead of asking Uncle Sid and Aunt Sadie out there where I live to have driven all the way into Murfreesboro when it's cold and snowy, they could go on to the Rockville Health Center out there and got tested, or they could got their shot. And it could be administered by a EMT that works for the fire department, or one that works for the ambulance service. Or the same in Las Casas, or the same in Christiana, or Amelville, or what else. Plus, whenever we're trying to make these ambulance runs, we've got 6 of these stations sitting on the outer rim of Murfreesboro, where rather than an ambulance running from the traffic into the traffic from the center of the city, they're coming from on the outside of the county going into the city and dodging some of this traffic. So there's a lot of pluses to it. We're sitting on the outside of Smyrna. We're sitting on the outside of Murfreesboro, where we're looking at the whole county, not just the rural area in particular. So, Mr. Chairman, I've said too much, and you knew when I come up here I'd say too much. But it's something that's very deep to me and very important to me, and I just think it's a good move. And you knew I was going to say that, didn't you, Rhonda? So, but I do appreciate your time.
I'm going to be calling you back up here in a little bit on another subject that we'll come back. So I'm going to let you go for right now. But unless one of you guys have got a question for Chairman Reed, I appreciate you struggling to get here and making it. Something I want to remind a few of you that may remember this or not, but this is not the first State Farm building that has come up for sale in our county. I don't know how many of you remember, there used to be right down here on Broad where we've got a Hooters now. Yep. There was a facility there that was offered for sale. The county didn't buy it. It was perfect size for our Board of Education, which was overcrowded at the time over there on Memorial. You know what I'm talking about, Commissioner Dodd. But anyway, I've always thought, well, there was a missed opportunity for the county to procure some office space that we need in the future. You know, at that time, I thought this is a no-brainer. We need a Board of Education expansion, and we ended up paying for it. You know, just like we need some expansions in other areas, but that's kind of why I'm on this. I look at the cost of it, say $25,500, and you know that's the cost of basically that's less than the cost of an elementary school. And the property that's available with this, to me, it's a no-brainer. I understand the questions, and I'm glad you're asking them. That's why I asked to bring it up tonight. But Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's still a lot of information that we don't have, so I'm going to call for the question for what Commissioner Piercy asked.
Now, when you say call for, you're calling for a vote. With no objection, we'll do that. Or do we need to call roll for the question?
This is just,
Call the
I don't
question.
see any objection. We'll go ahead and call roll.
yeah.
Commissioner Allen?
No.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Gooch is not here. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
No.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
4-2.
4-2, so we will forward this to the full commission, and hopefully we'll have some more answers for us on the 10th.
We really need to make that clear that this was just forward to the full commission without any recommendation up or down.
We'll do
Further
that.
discussion.
Yeah, well, this was not a positive
Was not a
recommendation
vote.
or a negative. This is just get it in front of the full commission. Okay. Well, that actually went quicker than I thought it would, so. Next up is a current year review, revenue amendments. Excuse me, Lacey.
Ready? Okay. So I passed these out to you in our last meeting so that you would have time to review. What we've got before you are the detailed amendments to the various line items in the general fund, solid waste, ambulance, the drug control fund, and the highway and public works fund, and debt service.
This is just for our review. Again, this is not anything we're going to vote on right
Yes,
now.
yes, to vote on it, and it will go to our full commission.
Oh, okay, for
Right.
publication.
Well, I mean, it's like any other budget amendment that we do, so it will go to the full commission. We just thought we could take care of these. The other reason why we do this is to kind of get an estimate, a little better estimate of what our beginning fund balance is, and that goes into the publication. You see what I'm saying? So this work has to be done before we pull the statements and things together for publication. Now, the school board, I've got an estimate for their improvement for their fund balance, and that is what is, those increases based on the changes to the various revenues in this fiscal year are rolled into the estimated beginning fund balance, is what we will be talking about for next year. Okay? So, again, general fund, and you'll see that we have, we've got the increases and decreases for the various lines. We've got, some of the revenues are restricted into use, so we try to account for those. And I see that on 6 of 12 will be our increase or decrease to our estimated fund balance. We're estimating at this part 38,186,820 for our net unassigned fund balance. In the general fund, in solid waste, with the improvements we anticipate, the fund balance at $9,852,119. That is on page 7 of 12. Ambulance, with increases, net decreases, are estimating the unassigned fund balance with the changes of revenue to be $6,681,525. The drug fund at $979,199. Our net increases and decreases in Fund 131 gives us a projection of the assigned and committed committed for highway at $2,532,603, assigned, and then assignment of $13,475,43. And debt service, with the various increases of revenue and increases and decreases. And some of these we've talked about, they shouldn't be surprises, we talk about it every month, measuring the different revenues against the budget, comparing to the prior year, telling us this looks like that we're going to be able to increase these various revenues. So that is our recommendation for all funds and revenue estimates.
Hey, you've heard the Finance Director's recommendation for our revenue. Are there any questions?
Lisa, how long has it been since we've made any adjustments to our fee schedule in the planning department?
I think it's been a while. I think you asked that earlier, and we gave that to you. I mean, I don't remember the last time fees were adjusted in building.
I'm just wondering if it's not time for us to revisit that, especially
going into next year.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, Property Management, both Mr. Demasi and
Bill.
Bill.
Tanya Bell?
Tanya Bell.
Yeah, in codes, they both brought their list and showed what, I've still got it on my desk, they showed what the surrounding counties were charging per permit fee, et cetera, and I think they probably need to be adjusted. And that was their recommendation, so that'll probably come from Property Management at some point in time back to full commission.
So the short answer is we're not sure. It seems like it's been about 5 years. I don't recall us.
It's probably been longer.
Or Tanya, how long has Tanya been in office?
I don't know. How long has Tanya been here?
How long has Tanya been there?
Tanya been here.
Now, it sounds like Director 3, but she's been there way before then. Yeah.
We changed it back my first term, and I said 6 years ago.
That's what I was thinking, around 5, so. Looks like we'll be looking at that again soon, so thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions for Finance Director on the revenues? If not, I'll entertain a motion so that we can forward this on to the full commission.
I'll make a motion that we approve the revenue adjustments as presented.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Allen?
yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Lisa. Next is review budgets as necessary. And that can open a whole new ball of wax. One thing that I do expect us to address, and again, while we ask Commissioner Reed to come too, is there's discussion and a vote out of public safety to look at a 8% increase for our public safety personnel, and part of that is going to be deciding who those personnel are. Is that everybody that works for those agencies, secretaries, whatever, and what agencies? That's one of the discussions, but having said that, Lisa, if you want to start.
I will start in total, and we passed these out, these long sheets to your table. And that's just where we have left off. I gave you all the details last time. And so without adjustments, where we are In total, all funds, estimated revenue at $652,617,881, with appropriations of $686,255,241. As presented, we're using $33,637,000 of fund balance to balance this budget. Now we've, with those estimates, improvements with the revenue, we're projecting the estimated unassigned fund balance in the general fund to meet our requirement of 15%. We're showing an 18.44% fund balance. Schools, with their improvement of revenue, we're at 8.44%. And the cafeteria, we're below the 25, and debt service, we're at 81%. Our estimated ending fund balance of appropriations. So as presented, we meet all our policies.
3%.
3. Now, I just remind you, when you say 8%, that's only 1 month of expenditures. And that 3% is not a county one, that's a state requirement, a bare minimum. As presented, and I don't know if you want to discuss it now or when we get to brass tacks, but we've estimated going from the adequate facilities tax to the development tax to the adequate facility tax, we've estimated $6 million. If it was development tax, we would put half of that in the general fund, half of it in debt service. So we have budgeted $3 million of the $6 million estimate for next year in debt service. We've not applied the other estimated $3 million. For total 6, the other 3. It's got to be used for education. So that money could go to Fund 177, which is the school's educational capital projects fund, and move some pennies out of that. You're replacing property tax with that development tax. A penny is about $1 million. But I would not recommend taking 3 cents out of that fund, only because we don't know for sure what is going to happen next year and how those monies will come in and if it will all come in. So that recommendation I'm making is taking good, solid money, which is property tax, out of the school education capital projects fund, moving 2 cents to the county general fund.
Not to debt service.
Half is already in debt service.
Well, I mean, the new agreement that we've got basically is, our old agreement was half of our funds went to debt service.
That's where I did.
And under the agreement that we've signed on to, we have to spend it all on education.
Yes.
But can of course, the debt service, 70% of that is education or higher.
Right.
So that's why I'm kind of digging if we can do that, or...
You could, but again, It's two different types of revenue. That property tax is going to be there every year. Adequate facilities tax is one-time money. You get it once, that's it. You get it from this household, that's it. It's where I kind of would like to, we spread that risk in development tax. We spread that risk between the general fund using capital and debt service. We didn't put all the eggs in one basket either way. And that's what I would be recommending is we're doing that same theory, is half of the risk of one-time money in debt service and half the risk in school capital projects. In this first year,
Do we get a feel of what's going on?
Yes. That's why I'm reluctant. I would be reluctant to say, school board, you're taking all this risk in this year that we're not sure going to this new process, what's going to happen. Debt service, it's the same kind of question, but we've got sufficient fund balance in debt service too, to bear some of that ebb and flow. But I don't want to take all that risk and put it in debt service.
So your recommendation is to take 2 cents?
To apply the $3 million, the other half of that, what we're estimating of adequate facility tax in Education Capital Projects Fund, and move 2 cents out of it and move it to the general fund. What I'm trying to do is to, this $16 million that we're upside down is not going into next year that far upside down. The other thing I would recommend is ambulance. Ambulance is showing a 1.3 to the positive. If you remember, what we're doing there is we've taken a lot of the expense out of the ambulance fund, the dispatch, and moved it to the general fund. So I would recommend whatever the equivalent of 1.3 and move that, because I believe that was what the expense was. I have to pull that in my budget. We've got an estimate of what that total cost of moving dispatch over, and move that to the general fund as well, to follow those, to take those property tax monies that are funding that dispatch and move it to the fund where those expenses are occurring.
And that's the 1.312521, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
ambulance?
I would balance that out. I'd take 1.3. I know that's fractions of pennies. In your book, the cost, the estimated cost is $1,386,000. It's what we're moving from ambulance fund into the general fund.
Lisa, just step back just a sec. So the adequate facilities tax in the next year, does 100% of it have to go to education, or is half of it in debt service deemed education?
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, because over 75%
Understood.
of the debt service is related to schools. So we're fine. We're fine there.
And that's my concern, the debt service. Yes, we've raised taxes, but I don't want to leave those for my grandkids to pay. I think we ought to be paying as we go, and that's helping us do that. That's why we originally set that up on the development tax, to take half of it, so we wouldn't be spending it on whatever, we'd be paying this debt down. So that's always been a concern of mine.
Another consideration. As presented, and we have not borrowed the money yet, but with an estimate of $2 million, and again, if this gets this through another year, is to take 1 or 2 cents out of debt service and move it as well to the general fund. We're sitting at 81% of our fund balance in debt service. Maybe one. Maybe one. Maybe one or two. Okay, so if Lisa were queen, I would move at least one out of debt service, 1 penny out of debt service into the county general fund, 2 cents out of education capital projects fund, and apply which is not in the estimated revenue for this fund, is the other half of development tax. It's going to...
Said Fund 177.
177,
Okay.
yeah, education capital projects fund. It's going to, in essence, when we put that estimate in revenue, I would assume the school board's not going to spend it until end of the year, whether or not it's going to be there. So we would be reflecting an extra $1 million coming into the education capital projects fund to $3 million in, $2 million out, in essence.
That $3 million is coming from this new
Yes,
tax.
that's one I've told y'all, it's kind of been floating around because we weren't sure how we were going to apply it, where it was going to be, so I'm thinking now's the time we do it.
I just want to make sure, and I know these two guys in front of me want to make sure they're not coming up with a deficit on that 177 account with us making this change.
It's going to reflect a huge increase, but that's what I'm saying, not spend it until it's revealed.
Since we're discussing this, if it's okay with the committee, I'd like to invite Mr. Bodie or the superintendent to speak to this. So
I just have one question for Lisa. Lisa, what was the logic in moving the 1 cent out of debt service? What were you thinking about that?
That's because the fund balance is at 81%.
Doug, go ahead.
I worked with Lisa Nolan on this, and when she was looking at this, the movement of the 2 cents, and speaking with Mr. Spurlock, and we're comfortable with this because we know that a large part of the debt service is education. We all know that, and those bonds have debt covenants that you are going to make those payments. Just like I said, my children are going to be paying on them, just like your grandchildren. And if the development tax slowed down, which it has in the past, we can put the brakes on something, and hopefully, with the stuff that is not breaking. Whereas a debt covenant, you've got to make that payment. So, like Ms. Nolan says, we could move the 2 cents of property tax levy. We put the $3 million estimate. We hold to see what materializes with this new development tax, and then come back later this next fiscal year if it materializes for an amendment before this commission. But that, once again, I think I like the way she's thinking. It's safe with our debt payments.
Any questions for Doug? Anything else? No? Thank you.
$1 penny from debt service, 2 from educational capital projects, and 1.3 about from ambulance. 4.3 to help offset that would show us, I'm doing round numbers, a $12 million going into fund balance. Original budget that we walked into the current year, we were 9.6 million of fund balance using it. So that's what I was trying to not have such a huge amount, that huge amounts every year going into fund balance, budgeting it. Now, generally at the end of the year, it doesn't really, we don't spend everything. Hopefully revenue's still coming better than what we've estimated. But on a budgetary basis, that's what I was trying to make it not look so bad on the general fund side.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions for our budget director. As I understand, there's no tax increase in this budget that's proposed as of now.
Yes, sir.
Now, are we setting ourselves up for failure next year to have to raise taxes if we keep spending at this same level?
What we see happening is every year we're projecting more and more going into our fund balance. Thankfully, is at the end of the year when we close, it's not, for the last several years, we've not gone into fund balance. We've increased it some. We've increased it. And what we've kind of done in the past is what we've saved by not spending and revenues coming in, that amount kind of took care of the next year's deficit. And we've been lucky enough over the years that it's matched it. Are we setting ourselves up? At some point, if we continue this, we're going to have to address the deficits if we don't save enough throughout the year by not spending everything that we have appropriated.
Hopefully that answered.
That did. It sounds like next year that if we don't make some cuts now, that we're going to have to raise the taxes next year. It looks like if we're spending this much out of the fund balance, is a lot of that attributed to the pay raises for the employees?
That's something I'd like for us to discuss tonight. It was sent to us from Public Safety to address, so we can address that one.
It's a combination of two things. It's additional positions plus increases. It's not all allocated to the salary increase.
After this budget is published, will we have a chance to go back and reevaluate those?
All the way to the end.
Because I'm afraid we're probably going to have to scale back on some of these pay raises and squirrel away some of that money and save it for next year so we don't end up in a bad situation next year. And that's a difficult decision because I know a lot of people are excited about a lot of money that might be coming their way, but I think we're probably going to have to be a little more careful with that. That 4% that's built in the budget now is in addition to the step raise that people would be getting it as well, right? So it's really 4% plus the 1.5 or 1 point.
So can y'all see that? Do I need to make that bigger? Okay. Let me go. Oh, that thing. Okay, hold on. This doesn't work as good as my desk. Okay. So this is what 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. So the increase of the table to 4%, this is the effect on the various funds.
Now but you're talking about all employees here, or what?
Yes, that's all. That's lifting the table 4%.
Okay.
But again, there's a lot of positions that's been recommended too that's creating this increase too.
But did you get your question answered?
These numbers help. It looks like every percent's increase in the liability to the general fund by about $500,000.
Yes.
And this budget has all the steps in it. Is that you would question that?
It's 4% plus the step raises that are due. So some people are getting 5.5 or 5.75%. It's not 4%. Some are getting 5.75% in reality. So if we scaled it back to 3%, they're really getting 4.75%.
Those that have topped out would just get whatever the lift to the table is.
And that's a flat across the board 4% for everybody. There's no, and a lot of folks at the bottom I know need the 4% because people can't afford housing and apartments, and I understand that. But I know a few years ago we had this discussion, but some of the folks that are making, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, they really need $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 more dollars. But it seems like our turnover's on the lower ranks, and we might need to have that discussion again too about a way to reduce the amount if you're over a certain figure that your raise isn't quite as much, to save us some money, because I'm not sure we've had anybody making $100,000 that's left in the past year or two. It seems like it's the people that are making the $30,000 and $35,000, and I certainly want them to get as much of a raise as we can give to them. But I think we're really going to have to look at this and reel it back just a bit so we can save some money and not be in such a bad situation next year.
Any other committee members have any thoughts along those lines or any other questions? So, Lisa, just so I'm going to try to recap here. You're basically saying if we pulled 4.3 cents, 1 cent from debt service, 2 cents from Fund 177, which is school capital projects, and then approximately 1.3 from ambulance, that would give us, what, the 4.3? Did I miss one? No.
That's quick round numbers.
And next year also, the mayor pointed out, that's a reapportionment year, so we should see some increase in revenues at that time. So that's one thing helping us as far as what we're looking at for the coming year.
That's just something I would put out for food for thought. The way this is laid out meets our requirement. I guess I'm always, I feel like if there is discussion that there might be a property tax increase, that needs to be disclosed. If that is the intent, that needs to be disclosed to the public in the public hearing and the publication. Moving pennies around doesn't really affect the property tax rate, it being the same. So if they're not ready to make that decision on moving money, I mean, we certainly can go in like this to public hearing and to publication that the way the property tax is distributed still is meets the policy. I guess that's kind of what I want to know from y'all, how you want us to present to the public.
Well, that is a decision we need to make. Do you need that decision tonight? I know we've got a publication on the 15th.
Whatever you decide tonight, that's what we're going in for publication.
Okay, that was my question.
It just takes us a while to pull all of it. It's got to be into the paper by next Thursday. So we've got to do all of our work to get that publication.
But we still have the option to change after that. But to reiterate, this is not an indication that we're looking at a property tax increase.
Right. And that's not what I'm feeling from y'all. It's just my feels. I don't know.
That's my feeling. I'll be very overt.
Excuse me, Chairman. Do you recall how much we hit fund balance last year to balance?
Didn't you say 9 million?
No, that was 9 million in the general fund. Were you talking about everything?
Yeah, just at this juncture last year, there's a bottom line total revenues over under appropriations. We're at a negative 33.6. We're going to pull that from fund balance. Do you recall last year's?
No, but I'll look it up. I'm just trying to think which my best.
I'm just following on Robert's logic. Where have we, what fund balances have we pulled the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years? Just curious.
Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, no, it's in Word. That's why I can't find it. It's going to be a big document. 101. I want to talk about something else while I'm looking this up. I'm feeling the pressure.
And I was going to let the pressure ride for just a moment, but I'll also be glad to certainly be glad to hear that answer at another time.
There we go. Yeah, last year, our original budget was $28.6 million is what we came into this year. You see it? You need me to make it bigger? 28,601. Okay, hold on. We were projecting 172,517.
And we ended up at 182, right? Okay. $10 million improvement, yeah, okay.
That get
Thank you.
Okay. Before we make a decision on this, if y'all don't mind, I'd like to discuss the issue that public safety asked us to look at, which is an 8% increase for public safety employees. And I know Sonia I asked her the other night, have you got this information? She says she's got it broken down, so if we decide we want to give across the board an 8%, if we wanted to give X number of people, hopefully we've got all that, and you feel more comfortable addressing it back there, or you can come up here, of course.
It'd be easier if I could sit back here, if y'all don't mind, because I've got everything spread out so I can speak to you, but I can bring it all up front if you want me to. You want me to come up?
I'm fine with her back there as long as you guys are, so no problem. Go ahead where you're at.
So a couple of things were brought forth, and I've tried to compile everything that was asked. One was, I believe, Commissioner Allen and Commissioner Gooch. At the end of it, we were talking about turnover rates and what they look like, and I asked them to pick, how many years, and they said 5 years. What's the turnover been like in the last 5 years? So I did that. And I'm starting off with this because you kind of have to know where we've been to kind of understand why we're asking what we're asking to be done. Because when it goes to losing people and you replace them, whether it be to retirement because they leave for another job or whatever, you're still having to replace them with someone else. And I feel certain that not only is this a county general concern, but I'd say the Board of Education has some of the same issues, and other entities across the state have the same ones that we do. But when I pulled the numbers to see how many full-time people left in the last 5 years, we had lost 810 full-time people. Of those 810 full-time people, 84 of those people retired. So when you start looking at 84, which is 10% of our population, and 28% of our population can retire today, and so if those left, you're having to go back and fill those. So you're losing all that knowledge base that you have for somebody who's a retiree that leaves, and then you're bringing in somebody new to bring them up to speed. That person is not going to work at the same capacity as the person who has been here 20, 30 years or more. So it takes a learning curve. Not only that, but the expectation of salaries is higher than it probably was when that person started versus when they retired. The other thing that I looked at, 40% of the 800 that we asked to leave. whether it be that they violation of policy in one form or another. They violated our drug-free policy, dishonesty, absenteeism, false, any number of items that were a violation of our policies. So then that leaves us with 50% of the population leaving for one reason or another. They resigned because they were taking another job, they went back to school, they have family needs. And so when I looked to see how many resigned for another job, that was 200. So of the ones that left, 84 of them left because they resigned for another job that we know of. We had 260 others resign, but we don't know why they resigned. They didn't tell us when they left. They just said, I'm giving you my 2-week notice. But 84 of the individuals told us they resigned. Now, some of the people went into other career fields, but when you start looking at our public safety individuals, 9 times out of 10, a patrol officer, a firefighter, a medic, a paramedic is going to go to another job in the field. You may have a detention officer that says, I've decided I don't want to be in corrections or I don't want to be in law enforcement. But when you start looking at the certified officers and your firefighters and your paramedics, those are usually individuals who are leaving us to go to another employer within the same field. So another 10 to 20% of our employees, and maybe more because of the ones that didn't tell us why they were leaving, left to go somewhere else to work. So that kind of lets us know how many people left for various reasons, and I have a full breakout if anybody wanted to see that. The next thing that I looked at is we talked about, I tried my best to figure out how to compile something that would be easier for you to see, the very far right-hand column of the spreadsheet that I gave you, or the multiple sheets that I gave you, the far right-hand column is where we're at today. So that's what, when we talked about public safety at first, I was thinking of our sheriff's office, our ambulance service, our juvenile detention, our correctional work center, and our fire department, and I'm probably leaving somebody else. I can't think right now, but I tried to put the positions that were the certified. One of the conversations that I had with the sheriff's office when we were looking at the salaries for the year prior to this conversation, it was around what was said earlier, that our people who are in the leadership, or we'll call them administration, are the ones that were not necessarily included in this, and when you look at the salary survey, doesn't necessarily recommend they get an increase. The ones who were getting the increase is the lieutenants and below. Those are the ones, I'll call them boots on the ground for a lack of a better word. The lieutenants, whether it be at the sheriff's office or our current ones that are called the EMS North End supervisors, our assistant directors that are in the field for the ambulance service, our fire lieutenants.
What are these headings mean? The 1, 11, and 20?
1 is step 1, 11 is the median. That's where we're going to be the average, and 21 that's the max.
Wow.
That's topped out. Yes, ma'am. And so when you start looking at this, it's looking at our individuals who are from the sheriff's office. I'll just go from their example, from our detention officers all the way up to our lieutenants. Those are the individuals. The detention officers are the ones who are face-to-face dealing with the detainees, or the individuals that are incarcerated. Then you have our patrol officers, regardless of where they're assigned, whether it be judicial services or whether it be out patrol or whether it's an SRO, they are out in the community. Then you have the corporals and the sergeants and the lieutenants that have varying levels of supervisory responsibilities in the field. And that goes the same for our ambulance, and that goes the same for fire. So when I did this, I did this thinking, okay, when we think public safety, what does this look like? We had already requested in the budget to a reclass on the firefighters, not anybody else, just the firefighters. And that had already been something that we put in there based on the salary survey of a department we really needed to adjust. But then after I started looking at this, in my mind, I started thinking, which is why I need more direction to give the commission what they're asking of me. Public safety is not just the public safety departments that we mentioned. Not only do you have the juvenile detention, the correctional work center, but you also have our court system. You have our probation department, our recovery services department are all part of public safety. You have youth services, which is juvenile. You have animal control. You have, I made a list. You have the judicial system itself. So you have the judges, you have the ADAs, the prosecutors, the public defenders, you have PAWS, you have EMA, I had left them out earlier, you have domestic violence. So when you start looking at who all encapsulates public safety in one form or fashion, because they're all dealing with the same issues, they're just not all, they're not on the scene. They're more of support for the public safety process. That takes us to 936 of our 1,200 employees. So you're looking at 3/4 of the county population is public safety. If you add in public health, which is an area that had we not had a good health department and doing the things that we would do, then you're up to 991. So then I say, well, what's left? I said, what departments are left of that? 151 of the 1,200 are our elected officials, not including the mayor's office, but our circuit court clerk, our trustee, our register of deeds, our property assessors, who all of those individuals set their own salaries and are not part of this process. But that's 151 of the 1,200 that I've counted. Then after that, you have 51 employees who are in our planning, our engineering, our building codes. You know, those are departments that are essential to our growth, essential part of the processes. And then the last 74 employees in the county are what I call support services. That would be the mayor's office, the finance department, our risk management department, IT, maintenance, and HR. So when I started looking at this, I said, what do I include, what do I exclude? So I must confess that what I brought y'all 2 nights ago about the 8% lift to the table, and I explained that I misunderstood the direction I did the entire table, I didn't know who to exclude for the public safety. So what department do I take out? What, do I only include certified officers? So if I do certified, is that just patrol? So does that leave out our detention officers? So I want to give you good information, and I don't feel like, other than just saying, if we lifted the table 8%, what I provided you here is ambulance, fire, and patrol. Ambulance, fire, and the sheriff's office. And I did put animal control officers on here, not the entire department, but because I feel like they're out in the field, boots on the ground. And we needed to recognize that. So when I lifted, so that's the next piece. The next piece is looking at what our salary survey. We collect data from other counties every year. We try our best. And to get their pay plans that they had in the last fiscal year, or the current fiscal year, not the last fiscal year, but the current. And look to see, in comparison, what that looks like for us, and does that have some impact on our recruiting? And it absolutely does. You know, when the city of Murfreesboro, compensation is significantly more than ours, that's going to hurt us. When Williamson County, who is a sister agency, Wilson County, who is a sister agency but is smaller than us, Bedford County, who is smaller than us, is paying more, then you start having to say, well, we're going to have to do something. And I realize that salaries is probably one of the biggest of any organization's budget. Is probably the biggest piece. The employees' salaries and their benefits, if you look at their operating budget, it's going to be one of the most significant pieces. So I understand why you have to be, I don't want to say, frugal, why you have to be frugal with the taxpayers' dollars, but I also know that we have to continue to maintain services for our citizens, that they expect those. And if we're having the turnover, to lose 800 people in 5 years and your total employee count's 1,200, we're losing half of our, every 2 years we're losing several math's not my thing. Lisa, what percentage would it be? If I'm losing 800,
8/12.
so
8/12.
8/12 of our population. So we're having to replace that, retrain. So the cost is what I'm trying to say of losing people is costing us more in my turnover rates. So I looked at look to see if there were any other public safety positions within the list that I just gave you across the board. And there were a couple of other positions that if you were going to look at it, that we would need to adjust. The firefighters is already in there, but we would need to adjust the animal control officers and our paramedic ones. We would need to adjust those up. Even with the 8%, and it's not included in any of this, any of my numbers, but when I looked at that to bring that to you tonight, I said, if the goal is to get us closer to what our survey says for our public safety to reduce turnover, that's one of the things that I think that you have to consider. And then give me guidance on what you want so I can email you out the dollars to say this is what you've recommended. Doesn't mean that you're doing it, you're just wanting to say what does this look like, and so that you can make a decision, I guess. But I need to know where to go with it.
One extra comment too on Ms. Stevenson. One, you said we've already, and we do have it already included in the budget, is a change in firefighters. But in addition, and we talk about it, and I know those of you on public safety, you're aware of it, but not everybody's on public safety. But there is a fundamental change in the EMT and paramedic work schedule, which in effect is an increase in pay. Going from, the idea is to move from working 24 hours and 48 off is what they're doing now, but the proposal that while the numbers are in there and you've got extra positions, it's to move from that to work 24 and be off 72. So for the same money, that group will be working less hours. Is that fair? Right? Public safety? That was the intent? So it's two groups, I think, that we've already addressed if we move those paramedics and EMTs to this different work schedule. And firefighters that have moved up, I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 pay grades.
Two pay grades for the firefighters to go from a 20 to a 22.
So some of those we've already addressed, and that a 2-grade increase is 6%.
So you're saying with that new schedule, they would not have an equivalent pay at the end of the...
That's what I'm saying. They will have the same pay, work less.
She's saying their hourly rate will change.
Hourly rate will go up.
Okay. Because the way I understood it is there would be no increase in overall cost to the county on their budget, but they're working fewer hours.
They're working fewer hours to get the same money, which to me is an increase in pay.
I'm not going to argue that point with, but what I heard was there was no increase in pay to the county at the end of the year. He made $40,000 this year. There was no other changes. He'd still be making $40,000 with that scheduled change.
Right.
Only his hourly rate would actually be higher.
Their salary would not.
Because he's working fewer hours.
Right.
Okay. Just make sure I've got that in my head straight. So.
You're looking at the public safety to say we want to help with retention. Yes, that's one of the things that. Anyways.
Well,
that's one of the things that's been addressed already.
Well, there's several things out there, and I want to make sure we give public safety their due. And, you know, like I said, there were 6 commissioners there at that committee, and I'm one of them that voted to bring this forward to us. I'll make sure we get a full discussion of it. just, Sonia, so I'm clear in my head, what you presented the other day, you said 3 million would do an across the board. Is that, all right, we're going to go across the board, or what we've looked at so far, we're going across the board with all employees at 4% pay increase. The money that you're talking about, is that 4%?
It's 3.2%.
On top of the 4, or is that 8% on top of the 4?
So it would be 3.2 on top of the 4. So the 4%'s budgeted, so it would be 3.2 more to lift. But remember, I said that's the entire, that's like all 1,200 employees, plus reclassification of the positions. Because as I explained the other night, when you reclassify one position, if you reclassify a position at the bottom, you have to roll it up. So the reclassifications took place from the entry level up to a lieutenant, but then anybody above a lieutenant, their classification stayed the same. So one of the questions that was mentioned, and I went back and looked, and I failed to mention that the other night, was, and I think Commissioner, to his point tonight, he said, well, it appears as though the people, the higher in the administration that it is, that they're making more and the ones at the bottom are not. The purpose of this is to give an increase to those individuals from detention officer, patrol officer, or from advanced EMT to paramedic or firefighter to lieutenant. And that's why I was calling it the boots on the ground. That gives those individuals, the ones who are in the field, the benefit of the reclassification if it called for it. So like we did a reclassification of our advanced EMTs last year. We took them from a 20 to a 22. In the budget this year, we had not had any other reclassifications for the ambulance service other than the changes that are made to the shift schedules and the increase to the lift of the table. Our firefighters have not been touched in several years, and so the recommendation this year was to move them from a 20 to a 22 because of what they're doing in the field. One of the things that happens with that, though, is we're trying to get the EMA department, which gets confusing when I say public safety, but EMA, I'm going to call it EMA for the lack of confusing everybody of saying public safety. EMA, EMS, and fire under that public safety umbrella, the public safety director, trying to get their titles in the same classification and pay. Not because they're going to be, and I don't want to create confusion. I don't want a paramedic to think that the purpose of doing this is so that they're going to work on the fire truck or that they're going to work. That's not the purpose. It's because in that field across the board, when you look at other entities who have a similar setup to what Rutherford County has, that's how they do their structure. So then when we look at doing the patrol officers was one of the ones that we have turnover on, and the recommendation in this was to move them from a pay grade 24 to a 26. So when we do that and we move them to a 26, well, the corporal can't be at a 25 and then be at a 26. So that's one of the things that I say is an unintended consequence. It rolls the corporals, the sergeants, and lieutenants up, but it does not affect the captains and above.
That increase that you're speaking of right now, is that in the current budget for the firefighters and the EMTs?
Say it again, what?
For that increase you were talking about for the firefighters and the EMTs, is that in the current figures we're looking at and
Yes.
already in?
Yes, it is. They're in my numbers. I don't know. Are they in your? We put them in your budget, Lisa.
I think I've got them.
That was what was, yes, I'm pretty sure.
Now, you said you had a breakdown you could share with us, and you asked me the other night who is public safety, and I said, no, I'm not going to be the one to say, yes, this guy is, this guy's not.
Yeah,
So that's why I asked Chairman Reed to come help me answer those questions for you. But there's a couple things going on that I want to mention, and I would. First of all, I would like to see the breakdown that you've got, and Vice Chairman Gooch, I think, had a good point the other day at our last meeting. Basically he said, well, yeah, I can see raising these entry-level guys, but, you know, we're not bleeding at the top. These people that have been here 5 years plus and have got rank, they're basically staying with us. And like you said, you know, after the lieutenant level, basically, we're not having that bump or domino effect
Right, the
come
captains, majors, deputy chief, and chiefs would stay the same pay grade.
What I'd like to see in the sheriff's department, both detention and patrol, is, you know, increasing those folks. This is just me talking here. I mean, you guys definitely, I want to hear from everybody in here, but I definitely want to see how that would affect us and what it would cost to do those people that are active
So the
in
detention officers,
detention and in patrol. Also, you know, your EMTs and your firefighters, you know, those are your basic ones, and that's also including juvenile detention and the workhouse, because they're still doing, basically, they're doing the same detention job. I'd like to see what it would cost if you got that as a total number, and I'm not saying these are the only ones. You know, we had guys out here taking
I can tell you what those reclassifications will cost right
during the
now.
middle of this COVID problem that we were having, and
Anya, I still
a
have,
lot of people have put themselves at risk for us, is what I'm saying.
So the reclassifications will cost you about $900,000.
Anya, I've got AEMTs still at 22s.
That's correct.
Okay.
The reclassifications, when we move the patrol officers, will cost you about $900,000, close to $1 million, if I reclassify them. Because I broke it out, and I think I gave this to you guys the other night.
Is that just patrol, or is that just detention?
That was all the public safety, the unintended consequences, all the way up to lieutenant. That included, so it included the detention officers, patrol officers, which patrol anybody who's certified. So that's an SRO, that's your criminal warrants officers, that's your did I say SROs? That's your judicial services. So any of those individuals, and then it moved up the corporals, the sergeants, and lieutenants at the sheriff's office, correctional work center, and juvenile detention center. It reclassified the firefighters from a 20 to a 22, and it let me think who else is in there. And then it was just, I think it was like one, let me see the grade on this one, I can tell you. 29, hold on just a second.
He's looking for that. Commissioner Stevens, you had a question.
I did. Are we going to vote on something like this tonight that would affect the publication, or is this a discussion that should be had once we have more clarity and information? Because I just don't feel like this is going to have any bearing on what we vote on for the publication tonight.
And I tend to agree with that. I want to get this information out here. I want y'all to have time to look at it. You know, if we decide we want to make a change later, I think we can after the publication. But I wanted to get some rough numbers out there so we can kind of say, hey, is this going to make a difference as far as having to do a tax increase? And, you know, depending on where we're going to go with, you know, what people, or if we're going to do anything. And there's also some other options, and I want to talk about them for a minute after we stop this discussion. But Sonia, you got your numbers now.
Right, it's right at $900,000. I mean, not exact, but I mean.
Maybe this would be a better way to ask you.
Okay.
Who does this exclude? That are in the normal.
Okay. So at the sheriff's office, it excludes everybody from captain and above. At the fire department, it would be the same, captain and above. Lieutenants went up one pay grade in fire to mirror the pay of the ambulance service. And then they're firefighters, but the engineers stayed the same, the chief, the captain, those individuals stayed the same. Then at the ambulance service, everybody at the ambulance service pretty much stayed the same. They just got the benefit of the 8% lift.
Now, when you say everybody, are we talking about Melanie's group, for
We're talking
instance,
about
at EMS?
everybody, yeah.
Okay, so nobody is excluded. That's dispatch, that's the secretarial, that's everybody at those agencies would be.
Well, now, the 900,000 lift is only those positions that I told you. The 3.2 is everybody. It's everybody, and the reclassification is 3.2. The 900,000, you said how much is it just for the positions reclassified, and that's about $900,000.
Okay. Now, and I thank all of you for indulging me for this, and Commissioner Reed got up the other day and he said he was chairman of the best committee out there. And since I was on his committee, I had a hard time arguing the point, but I would say that our committee works as hard, if not harder, than any committee out here. But having said that, I was going to ask Chairman Reed if he would come up, because I want to get your gut feelings on what came out of public safety, not just from my aspect of it, and what those guys and the reasoning behind why they were looking at this. I told you I was going to call you back, so.
I think I should have stayed in that traffic. This is a Pandora box, I guess, is what has been opened here. But I'll just tell you, Mr. Chairman, after we had that meeting or whatever, I did contact one or two that had made the motion and whatever, as far as the 8% was concerned, just to get their feeling about, okay, what are you talking about? What are you thinking about as far as the 8% is concerned? And basically what I was told from them was, what we're talking about, those that are the first responders, the ones that have been involved, the ones that did not Zoom, I guess is what you're saying, back during the pandemic. They were the ones that were there on the scene. They're the ones that face life situations. And that's what they're talking about. And I think, Sonia, I think you mentioned some of that as far as what we're talking about, that they're the ones that are involved in it, and that's what I think what was brought out here. Because the one that brought it up did not make the motion as such. I think we realized that. And then others sort of chimed in on it, and they just wanted to bring it up to the 8% where they'd be recognized for what they had been involved in, what they had done. So basically what I got from it and what I understand from it, it would be the patrol officers, it would be detention and what they had to deal with, it would be the EMTs, the paramedics that actually go out on the calls and do those sort of things. It'd be the firefighters, the ones that actually go out and involved in the fires and go from there. And I think you mentioned Paul's a while ago. You know, a lot of people don't realize it, but Paul's actually wears a bulletproof vest whenever they go out and face these individuals. I don't know, you know, there's a lot of us that think about as much as our dog as we do some members of the family. So, I mean, that is what the understanding is. That's what they're talking about, the 8%, Mr. Chairman, if that helps any bit.
It does. I didn't want this
that's
just
what the
coming.
contact I got. I called them just yesterday on that.
Now, while you're still up here, and I want you to be part of this discussion too, I was speaking to Lisa about her grants. And one thing that she said is some of these grants allow us to supplement salaries. Basically, we could give, instead of an increase, we could give a one-time bonus, and we could actually give a two-time bonus, a three-time bonus, and it was
2024.
up to 2024. So that's a two-time bonus paid for through the grants without changing the table. So there's other options out there. You know, Commissioner Stevens, and I'm glad you asked these questions, you know, what's this going to do to us next year? This is an option where we can recognize, hey, we want to keep you guys, and we're going to do what we can to help with this pay difference to keep you. But here's another option that we've got besides just lifting this table up here, is we could give a bonus, and you might explain a little bit how that would look, Lisa, if you don't mind.
I was going to say there is wished I had that back up here. But yes, with this American Rescue Plan, you can, I'm trying to find it real quick. You can pay a premium pay for these public safety folks. Let me see if I can find it. Pay.
It's under number 2.
Do what?
I think it's under section 2.
Section 2. Oh, that's incentives. Back to work. That's the payroll expenses. Well, I know it's in the 4. The what is eligible. Anyway, you can use this money, and it's a maximum of $25,000 or $13 an hour. I mean, it gives you wide ranges. So one recommendation just off the cuff would be once we have the money, and you could say those folks that were employed as of date certain, we'll pay it in May, half of it in May, half of it in November. Whatever you choose the dollar amount to be. And it's a flat amount, which I think some like a flat amount because it's more of a percentage for those lower folks on the lower, not as, it's a smaller percentage of income at the upper level, but it could be a flat amount that you could use for 3 years, up till December 24, I think, that would be obligated.
We talked about a figure, I think you said 2,000 and
I think
1,000.
It was, Sonia did some quick draft.
If you did it to include taxes and benefits so that they would get the full benefit of the 2,000 or 1,000 or whatever, the 2,000 for full-time and 1,000 for part-time, because we forget that our part-time people were here working like everybody else. That would be if you included the benefits and everything so that they got the full amount and didn't reduce that, it would be $3 million. That's how much the bonus would be for existing employees. And one of the things that Commissioner Gooch mentioned the other night, and I brought that information, I know I've given y'all so much information, was a hiring incentive as well. And if you looked at that, and if we just said we had 150 employees that we had to replace in the year, and we did a hiring incentive, or if we changed it, we looked, and there's several entities, the state of Tennessee, Brentwood, Portland, Knox County, Metro Nashville, all do bonus incentives for hire-on, and they give different percentages. So like the state of Tennessee, for their correction officers, they have a lower starting rate when they first start them. That first year, they give them a $5,000 signing bonus, but they don't give it to them in lump sum. They give it to them over 18 months. So every month they get an additional $277.78 on their check as a signing bonus, just that additional monies to help to encourage them to stay. And then for their existing employees, they did pretty much what we're talking about, giving the existing employees a lump sum as a retention bonus, not a sign-on bonus. So you've got retention bonuses and sign-on bonuses that if you didn't, depending on what pay structure you decided you wanted to do, they would do that as well. And this, let's see, also, so the state of Tennessee is doing a 7.5% increase to their table.
I found it in the Q&A. Eligible uses is premium pay. Essential workers are those in critical infrastructure sectors who regularly perform in-person work, interact with others at work, or physically handle items handled by others. Now that is pretty much everybody, because even your clerk is handling paper and stuff from public. Oh, custodial.
They're part-time, and we forget that they're not making big dollars, and they're working part-time. All of them, I think we've only got one or two full-time.
And ones that I don't want you to forget are those convenience center workers who are out there every day, meeting those public.
Gertrude.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we were I was talking with Lisa and with Sonia, just looking in hypotheticals and what could be done. Before we got to the 8%, we were going through every recommendation. Mayor's recommendation was 4% across the board. My recommendation was to go $2,000 out of the rescue fund, one-time, non-recurring dollars as a bonus to all of those employees. But it's not that I don't support the 8%, but if we feel like that it's going to push us into a property tax increase, then that's the will of the commission, that they need to consider that. But I thought that we could probably get by with a $4 and a $2,000 non-recurring bonus for employees.
Premium pay. Premium pay.
Okay, premium pay.
Well,
so those are just options that the committee needs to consider.
Chairman Reed, you think there's anything else we need to bring out on this? How about any questions from the committee? And I'm not asking for a vote on this tonight. I think we need to digest it. And if you would, Sonia, can you email us all these figures that you've got as far as, and you may have already sent them, and I hadn't seen mine yet, so. But please send those, because I'd like to review them.
So I want to be clear. So you just want me to do the positions that you gave and the ones that, again, the unintended consequences, because I can't move the patrol officers up without changing the others. So
I understand.
Okay.
And send it that way. Just make a note on the side. Hey, this is what this one is.
So do you want me to do that with the 4% that the mayor's already recommended and just show what the reclassifications would cost for that, and then what it would cost at the 8% with the reclass? I mean, do you want to see it in the event that you don't go the 8%? Do you want to see what the 4% in the reclass?
I'd like to see it both ways. I'd like to see the more information, the better, I think. Because I personally, when I vote on it, I want to know exactly what I'm trying to spend somebody else's money over.
It will take me a day or two to rebuild that table, because I'll have to strip out everyone else. Basically, I'll have two separate tables running simultaneously. So just
not an easy process.
You don't want it tomorrow, right?
Okay, and two, just so I'm clear on this, because on this bonus is not the word you use.
Premium pay.
Premium. On the premium, I want to know exactly who that would be. Who we're talking about. Is that
we just did a lump sum, okay. Full-time, part-time, the whole enchilada.
Across the board.
Across the board.
Can you get that done before you go on vacation?
No. It's my 25-year wedding anniversary in a couple of days. My husband surprised me with a trip for a few days, and I about had a stroke. But anyways, so I can get.
You just might have to do roundabout numbers instead of getting down to granular level.
Okay, we'll see. I'll be in the car for a long time, so I have my laptop. It'll be fine. I'll work on it.
Mr. Allen.
As we're looking at those numbers, I would really like to see a recommendation coming from staff, because the whole idea behind the 8% is you're trying to solve a problem. And so I'd like to see what problem are we solving and what is the official recommendation from staff.
And what we can afford. Right.
We talked about too, years ago, previous commission voted that we wanted to be in the 50th percentile, but based on your survey, we're not even in the 50th percentile. So part of the problem you're solving is creating equity among their peers. So that's part of what I'm listening for, is what do we need to do to be paying equitable compensation for these positions, period. And so sometimes that is pocketed adjustments. It's not across the board, because the problem's not always across the board. So that's a big part of what I'm listening for, is how do we solve a problem?
I will tell you from the survey, which I can go back and check and pull out some of those positions. You know, a few years ago, we did a complete overhaul to almost every position because we had gotten so out of line. And one of the things, the recommendation at that time that Ms. Nolan and I had gently suggested is that if we did a 1% adjustment, cost of living every year, that would help with this scenario. So I went back and took that same example that we used several years ago, and I plugged in a 1% lift. Had we done that, our patrol officers would be making the $45,000 that we had we done the 1% like we recommended then, they would be making the $45,000 now. So some of it is do we do these 1% incrementals that are more digestible, or do we ever so often get, and some of this is not, I don't want it to say that it's a negative reflection on what we've tried to do. Some of it's just the economy's changed. I'll give you an example. The recruiter in my office has been going to job fairs because we have tried to think of every scenario to help our public safety departments. You know, we post the jobs, they're all over the internet, they go nationwide, they're everywhere. She went to a job fair the other day and she had one person, only a handful of people came up. She's going to a job fair, the Chamber of Commerce, and they're expecting 800 people to come looking for jobs to be prepared. Well, she's prepared, but we don't know how many. So she's been going to job fairs. She had one at that one. She had about 10 at the last job fair. You know, we're giving out our cards, but I think some of the concern that we're having is that everybody's looking for this same group of employees, and we're all trying to come up with these creative ideas. We're not the only ones trying to say, what does this look like? I think it's just where we're at. Beth Duffield, who is the workforce development at the chamber, she wrote a comment on LinkedIn, in which I always follow the workforce development to see what's going on. And she said one of the things that had hurt us is with this the unemployment, where they were giving the stipends. And she said, had our officials did it in reverse and said, we will give you a bonus for having a job and keeping it. So instead of giving you the $300 to stay at home and not work, plus your $275, so you're $575 a week, had they said, if you go to work, we'll give you that $300 every week to supplement your pay where you're working, and that would have helped the employers, which I thought was like an excellent idea. You know, you're just paying it in reverse. You get a job, we'll pay you $300 a month for 26 weeks, and I mean, $300 a week for 26 weeks to help you keep that job to get yourself established. I thought that was like an awesome idea. But so I hear what you're saying.
Sonia, excuse me. One other thing you said earlier, I want to make sure I didn't mishear this. You basically said our turnover rate was 8/12. Well, I reduced fractions, so that's 2/3.
Thirds. That's what Mark said, 2/3. That's 66%.
Well, that's my point. If we're losing 66% of our employees that's every. So that's concerning. Well, I wanted to make it plain why I brought this up in public safety. I didn't make the motions. I wasn't expecting. I was actually wanting to talk to Sonia and get these numbers before we brought it to you, but you can see why I'm concerned about it. We have this kind of turnover rate. We need to do something about it. Now, and throwing money at it is maybe not the answer. You know, whatever the answer is, we need to dig into it and find out what's going on so we can help ourselves there. For this kind of turnover rates, I mean, I don't think it's sustainable.
And I will tell you that because the public safety department, public safety division makes up the largest portion of our employee population, obviously they're going to have the largest portion of turnover. So when you look at what departments have incurs the most, that's going to be our sheriff's office, our correctional work center, our juvenile detention, our fire and ambulance. Those are going to be and Paul's for our animal control officers and kennel attendants and those type things.
Lisa, go ahead.
How many did you say, this to me I think is something to keep in mind. How many did you say right now are eligible to retire? What percent of our employee population?
The last time I pulled it, I didn't pull it today, but the last time I pulled it, 28% of our population could retire. Whether they have their age 60 and 5 years of service and more, or whether they're 30 years of service, or if they're age 55, and the criteria that they can retire under TCRS, under that criteria, 28% could retire.
That's huge. That's
and
huge.
then if you take the 28% plus the percentage that's quitting every year, that's like a little scary.
I think that you need to look at those employees that have stuck with you to not leave them behind.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one other thing. As you're pulling this data, I would also like to know what should our turnover rate be? Because you're never going to be at zero. If you take that 810, you divide it by the 5, then you divide it by our employee population, it's about 13.5% annual. And of course, I know it won't always be annual. It could be more recently than, in that last 5 years, whatever. But I'd just like to know what should that number be?
In the past, I did that. I've been I do a turnover report since I've been here. We had averaged around 8% up until 2014. And then in 2014, we started hitting double digits. In the last couple of years, we've been 13.2, and this is overall countywide, 13.2, year before 12.7, 14.7, 12.3, 10.6, 11.5. So up until 2014, we were around 8%, and then we saw a huge jump. So that's our trends continue to climb. We would really prefer a county our size to be 10% or less would be ideal, but actually none would be ideal, but you're going to have some.
Okay. Well, I've beat on this dog for as long as I think we need to tonight. Sorry for holding us up this long, but I think it's something we've got to address. But having said that, is there anything else we need to review in our budgets tonight before we move on to our next proposal? And you need a vote.
If you want to vote on this kind of in total, this is what will go for publication and for the public hearing.
That's the sheet you've got in front of you that we were discussing before I buried us all.
I'm comfortable making the recommendation to follow the recommendation of the finance director, and that would be moving 1 penny out of general debt service, 2 pennies out of educational capital projects, 1.3 out of ambulance, and taking that 4.3 and moving it to line 101 county general, but leaving our tax rate the same, just doing that internal shift of funds.
And add the $3 million.
And add the $3
the
million.
other half of that adequate facility tax into the education capital projects.
177.
And 177.
Right.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Now, this, Commissioner
Is this
Stevens.
just a change, or is this what we're publishing in the newspaper?
This is for publication.
This is for publication. And
I'm going to vote yes to publish in the newspaper, but I'd want it to be very, very clear that I want to look at these paid amounts at our next meeting, and we're probably going to have a tough discussion about scaling back a little bit, or somebody's going to have to propose raising property taxes.
Any other discussion?
I would ask that we take this as a property tax change first and vote on that property tax change and those property tax. And then in the next item under the proposal, we add the $3 million plus the 2 or the 3 items that you mentioned the other day for official salary that we haven't voted on.
Okay.
For general fund and highway, and the election commission printing costs that we need to add to the budget because that has not been voted on yet.
Okay.
So if you
2
could
votes.
change your motion to make it just specific to the property tax rate changes.
Yes, my motion is for the allocation of pennies. Correct.
Commissioner Dodd, are you good with that on your second? Okay.
I concur.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Now we need a motion that has the 3 million.
Well, I don't think, I think we can just apply that one. I think what he wanted to go to next is, because we've not officially addressed this in yellow, the official salary revised by the state, and then the election for the revised printing cost, that brings the estimated appropriation to $122,433,194. Do you want to do that in two separate ones? It's just this one and 131 is the only other change.
Yeah, let's just vote on that by each fund.
Okay.
101 would be these two changes, 21,181 and 8,000.
So you're asking for a motion for
Increase the general fund budget by that 29,181.
Okay. So you've heard that recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries.
And this is the next one. And it is the highway fund to increase appropriations by $3,398 for that change in official salary.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the salary. Any questions for the director? Hearing none, call roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Motion carries. Trying to scroll up on your page here and it's not
I'm sorry,
working.
it's
Oh,
not
all
going
right.
up. I'll put it down so it doesn't, there, that's all mine.
And then if you want to vote on this as a whole,
As
as far
a
as
whole.
publication of total revenues and expenditures, which includes the $3 million that you just talked about going to 177.
That's already got your,
It doesn't have the 3 million, I've got
does
to
not?
move.
Okay.
We'll do
that
that.
already has your 1 cent from debt service, 2 cents from,
It's not, that what I've given you is not, but, I mean, as far as fund, but it's, the money is within.
Right.
All we'd end up doing was adding about 3 million to estimated revenues to account for that.
coming from the new tax.
So that would make estimated revenues at $655,617,881, and then the appropriations at $686,255,241.
Okay. And this is what we'll be publishing.
Right.
You need to add the 3 million to this on the motion? Okay. So we're now asking for a vote for publication plus, which is the sheet that you've been working at tonight, and $3 million from this new tax, which would go back into 177. I hear that motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. This is for publication, and it's this sheet plus the $3 million. Any other questions? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, guys. I don't believe we have any other business. We'll be back in here on the 10th. Hopefully, some of the questions we asked, especially on the State Farm building, we'll have those answers by then. I appreciate y'all indulging me looking at this pay scale. And Sonia, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you got in there. And by the way, congratulations on your upcoming anniversary. Having said that, we're adjourned.